Thank you very, very much, Joe, for having me be here. I'm very grateful to Ways Forward and all of the effort that has been put in. And it's kind of strange to be standing here because I was born in Blackpool, and my great-grandfather is 6 feet deep in Southern Cemetery in Manchester, which is as deep as my roots want to be at this point. I left Lancashire to start a new life in the United States, and when I got there, I became involved in cooperatives. So I went 5,000 miles to get to Rochdale. But it's been an interesting journey. So the title for today's conference is Cooperative Solidarity, and it is something that I have spent a lot of time thinking about. In the USA, we have 3 sectors that do very, very successfully practice co-op solidarity. They are the agricultural cooperatives, the credit unions, and the rural electric cooperatives. And the characteristics that they have are part of what I think has made them successful. They have plentiful support from their own system-wide agencies. They have direct access and control of the finance source that they borrow from. And I know the finance has been talked about quite a bit here today. Each of those sectors, within that sector, they have shareable formulas. The executives in all of those sectors also can easily go from one firm to the other because the built-in systems are very, very replicable. And the replication costs of best practices are low, and the uptake is faster because people are working within a system. And as a result of that, for example, credit unions have about 8% of the total banking activity in the United States. Agricultural cooperatives have 30% of the supply business and 30% of the marketing business. And rural electrics provide 90% of the land of the United States with co-op power. So America wouldn't work if it weren't for electric cooperatives. When some of us created the National Cooperative Bank in the 1970s and 80s, we had a vision of what might be possible. And many of us wanted to replicate the Italian model and the Mondragon model. But in the age of the bank was created, we went into business, and a month later, Reagan became president. So you can imagine that it became a very difficult period for us to carry out the kind of ideas that we had. So we quickly fell back on those development ideas that we already had. They were successful, they were homegrown, they were things that we could easily work with, and we got a lot of support for them. But the reason that we had started the co-op bank was that we had 3 emerging sectors that really needed access to capital, access to beneficial help from the consultant sector. And those 3 were, we did not have a consumer food co-op sector, so there were no co-op consumer stores in the United States, except for a few that were left over from the 1930s. So we had none of those, but we had a lot of them growing. We had around about 200 individual food co-ops throughout the country. We had worker co-ops who were looking to grow their capacity, and we had housing co-ops that wanted to grow their capacity. So those were the 3 that we wanted to help. The biggest problem early on was that the vast majority of the customers that we had, and I went to work for I was the first co-op employee of the bank. I went to Washington to set it up. I became the director of strategic planning and set up the regional banking system. But the vast majority of our customers were what I call one-off co-ops. We helped that one co-op do that one thing in that one town, in that one state. And the ability for us to serve all of those people became impossible. Reagan pulled the plug on the funding, so we immediately had to stop doing what we were doing, and the co-op bank then began to deal with the customers that gave it the kind of reduced cost of the type of customers, and so they went off to start funding non-cooperative organizations because they were easier to serve and less costly and less problematic. So I have proposed that we start to look at ways of developing sectors, and so we would work only in San Francisco area, the Seattle area, the Minneapolis area, various places like where we have a core of co-ops already there, but that was not going to be possible. So we have the bank, we have the challenge that has come. The three sectors have grown, but not grown enough. And I think the challenge that we have to face in looking at cooperative development, and I know I need to finish here soon, so we need to substantially reduce the cost of helping each single co-op. We need to place more focus on cooperatives that can go system-wide, can be easily replicated, and can easily multiply themselves. And I often wonder, why can't we have a franchise model of cooperation? We need to create larger pools of capital, because the biggest gap that we have in organizing any new co-op is the gap of the membership capital and the equity that is needed to make that co-op flourish. And a lot of co-ops die waiting for membership equity. That is where the Cooperative Community Fund program comes in that we have developed. And we've worked with another set of groups, and we have about 150 million of near equity capital that is beginning to fill that gap. So the equity lending gap is still too large, the wait is too long, and the individual borrow is too costly. So that is the work that we need to do, and I thank you very much for letting me share that.